Because only 3 of our steering committee staff are here, I have the distinctive pleasure of being my own MC. So I'm going to introduce myself now as a speaker. For those of you who don't know, I've been a member of Dialogue for about 3 years now, and I've been promising to give a presentation ever since I got here, so they finally decided to cash in on that deal. So tonight, I'll be giving my presentation. All right, we're good. All right, so hello everybody. So my name is Barry Petticord, and I'll be presenting my talk on living the DevOps. I tell you what, a lot's changed in the last 3 months. Because I don't know about you, but for me, because I was totally on the whole grad school, PhD, professorship track, there was nothing farther from my mind than starting a job in industry. And now look at me. I got branded slides. I got myself a tweet from the corporate Twitter account thanking me for my presentation today. But actually, that's not true, because there was one more thing probably further from mine, and that was this idea of DevOps. I mean, even before I even got to college, I was really confident. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to build stuff. I didn't want to manage people's stuff. I didn't want to be an IT. I wanted to build stuff of my own. Build games or websites or tools, things that people were going to use and be awesome and become famous for, right? And in fact, whenever I applied for this job, the job description specifically wanted somebody who was a Python web developer. They want somebody with Python skills and Flask and jQuery. And yet within 1 week of me starting, Barry, this is Puppet. How about that, folks? But I tell you what, somewhere in those last 3 months, something went horribly right. Because I really have to say, I love what I'm doing now that I've actually had an opportunity to see what DevOps really is. Even though I don't think anyone really knows what DevOps really is. I looked on Wikipedia, and this is what I got. DevOps is the portmanteau of development and operations. The software development method that strengthens communication buzzword, collaboration buzzword, information sharing and web usage integration buzzword. See, it's full of buzzwords, completely impenetrable and thoroughly useless. So, I decided to do what any self-respecting internet nerd did. I pulled out my expert knowledge of etymology and decided to reverse engineer the meaning of the word by putting together 2 component parts. So we have dev, developer, someone who in my mind writes codes to automate things, right? We have ops, managing infrastructure. You put those 2 together, you have DevOps, writing code to automate the management of infrastructure. Anybody kind of, yeah, no, about right? I'm seeing some nodding. Come on, wake up, people. You all worried about the flash flood? And for a more holistic sort of serious interpretation of the definition, the way I see it is I see sort of DevOps, to me at least, being the application of the developer's paradigm to the missions, to the job description of the operations specialist. So the way I see it is I see sort of this idea about being proactive, sort of solving problems in advance and in a generic way that can be sort of redeployed in other environments with minimal modification. All right, which is kind of what you expect from a developer. Developers are generally associated with developing tools that are going to go to end users in a binary form. They're not going to really modify them or change or alter them. They're going to get it and use it as it is. Okay. In the DevOps world, it's very similar to that, but the way I see it is you're kind of packaging these solutions that are designed to solve problems that come up more than once, and then be able to share them with other people in a way where they can deploy them in their own infrastructure. Sort of modifying it for their unique case, because everyone's infrastructure is unique. And what's really spectacular about this is DevOps, to me, sort of moves operations from being a behind-the-scenes job that no one ever sees except when things go wrong, to being someplace where you can sort of share your solutions with a community that's going to sort of appreciate and respect them. Okay? There are ridiculous numbers of packages out there on Puppet Forge, Ansible Galaxy, the Chef Supermarket. Okay? They've also got plenty of time to make up all these ridiculous names for stuff. But because you develop your solutions and you test them and you make them sort of generic, you're able to share them with other developers and sort of put your skills forward. And also, there's nothing more developer-like than finding an open source solution online, using it instead of doing work yourself, and then using that free time to go to conferences on DevOps, so that way you can ensure you've got yourself some possible job prospects when you automate yourself out of your career. So, to me, where am I coming in here? Well, You know, I came in here not knowing anything about DevOps. Like I said, I applied for a Python web developer position, right? So how does DevOps come in here, and what made me fall in love with it? Well, that's what this presentation is all about. But before I get too much into it, I want to provide some context about where I'm coming from. And a lot of this context actually comes from the company's product and sort of its desired objective for it. So like Andy introduced earlier, we work for a company called Cumulus Networks. We call ourselves a software company, and we ship a version of Linux that's designed to run on network switches. Okay, so these are like your top rack switches in the data center that's normally running something like Cisco IOS. It's got that proprietary command interface. But what we're doing is we're kind of dispensing of that and replacing it with Linux. Okay, a bash prompt, a Linux file hierarchy, exactly what you'd expect from managing a server, right? What's really spectacular about this is that it takes care of translating that sort of kernel representation from the files in etc and other configurations, and then silently translating that down to power the ASICs. It's going to kind of offload the switch from the software to the actual hardware, the hardware that they spend piles of money producing. And what makes this beautiful is how this makes the world of networking accessible to your system administrators. Not only does it make it accessible to their skill set, it makes it accessible to their tool set. Nearly anything that's compatible with Linux administration is compatible with Cumulus Linux. So whether you're doing something, you know, a hack job using something like rsync and cron jobs, or whether you're using something really fancy like Puppet or Ansible, whatever you're using to manage your servers is almost instantly scalable to your switch hardware as well. And the reason why I think this is so cool is because I work for the best division in the company. Customer engineering. All right, what in the world is customer engineering? Well, it's my team. So customer engineering is kind of this really weird offshoot of the group that no one's really sure kind of what we're there for. We don't work on the flagship operating system. That's Andy's team. Well, no, it's the team you work on. I don't think you're the...
No, you said it right the first time.
Oh, that's Andy's team. But what we work on are sort of demos and tools and documentation that's designed to make our operating system, like deploying it, more accessible to our customers. Okay? And the way we do this is what I think is by far the coolest part of all of it, is that we actually manage our own internal development infrastructure to do all this, and this infrastructure, among other things, runs switches running Cumulus Linux. In other words, my team essentially serves as like a prototypical example of what we see as being sort of the perfect kind of customer who can make the most use of what we produce. Okay, we call ourselves Customer Zero, okay, which is a really fancy way of saying we eat our own dog food. So what we do is, while managing the system, we discover the pitfalls, we discover the best practices that come with running a production infrastructure using the bleeding edge version of our own software. Okay, and not only are we able to provide additional quality assurance to our engineers, let no weird use cases that fail. Not only are we able to provide more documentation to our customers. What we're doing is not unique to our software. It's not unique to our product. It can be shared with anyone, user groups like this one. And that's why I think it's particularly special about it. That's why I love the team I work on. Also, I get to play with my own rack of switches in the lab upstairs, and that's so much fun. So here's the outline of the presentation. I'm going to talk about how my team's structured and how we communicate, sort of lay down the baseline for who we are and what we do. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of provide like some case stories. Okay, I'm not going to get super deep into the technical. I'm focused mostly on the kind of like it's a very high level what is DevOps presentation, because if you really want to know about the detail of Puppet, we've got Puppet user groups for that. Oh man, we really are in trouble with that flood, aren't we? Talk about how we communicate. I'm going to talk about our infrastructure. I'm going to talk about particularly the meat and potatoes of the workflow. How do we do DevOps on our equipment? All right. So hopefully you find this interesting, and if not, well, you got free pizza, right? So this is my team. This is C-Eng. They are a spectacular bunch of human beings, I tell you what. The way I've got them arranged, I've got my coworker Leslie, who's up in the San Francisco office. So that's one of the offices in addition to the Mountain View office. We've got me right here in Raleigh. We've got my boss Nat, who's off in Wales. And then we've got Christian, who's over in Bristol. As you can tell, I've cleverly arranged this screen so that way people are organized the way they are geographically and chronologically, because, actually reverse chronologically, because it's in the reverse order of when people wake up. Actually, with that right there, that's wrong. He always up first. Anyway, but essentially, what I'm trying to get here is that we've got a really widely spread out team. And we're also very small. Yet somehow we work together as a very cohesive unit. We get a lot of really cool stuff done. Okay? How is that? Where's the magic? Well, if you all were my junior software engineering class, the answer to that question, of course, is communication. And communication absolutely is key. We have a number of tools we use to communicate. Some of them we came up with ourselves, and some of them are handed down from the kings and queens of IT. We start off with the internal IRC channel. I mean, that right there is kind of a mainstay for any good geek group. We use Jira, Atlassian Jira for ticket tracking. We use GitHub, GitHub proper, hosted by GitHub itself for code sharing. We have our own wiki for internal documentation. We use mailing lists to mostly spam things from robots about failed Jenkins builds. And then we have 2 Google Hangouts each week where we keep up with what each other are doing, where we sort of check on what each other's blockers are, and provide a system so that way everyone stays on task. But tools, I mean, I could just list tools all day. I mean, it's all about how you use the tools, right? The term I like to use is, there's 2 terms I like to use. I like to use the term connectedness and accountability, all right? Those are 2 of the key sort of values I get from the communication infrastructure we've got going on. The first one is the sense of connectedness. We are a distributed team. We don't get to wave hi to each other in the office every morning like some of our other sister organizations do. So we have to have some really intentional way of providing that connectedness where we can kind of get that same pulse, that same sort of feeling that someone is there working, helping you out, and as a human being who respects the fact that you exist, right? And the cool thing about IRC is it does that. It's a really low urgency medium that provides a very low barrier to say hello to somebody without interrupting them. We say hi when we say hi to them, when we wake up, whatever time they're going to be, and we say hello, find out who's awake and what they're doing, right? If we have a problem we complain about in the IRC channel, it'll elicit the sympathy of our coworkers. Whenever we need someone to do something, we can easily say, who's available to help me review this pull request? That sense of connectedness really helps the team kind of feel cohesive. However, that's not enough. It's not just enough to feel really good, because that's just a club. That's how I feel when I'm with the lug, or with, I need to get some stuff done here. So then we have the other aspect, which is accountability. For that one, we use our ticketing system. The ticketing system is very well respected by most members of the organization, and we use this sort of to immediately, let me just give an example. Whenever I log into the ticketing system, the first thing I see is a list of all the tickets assigned to me. I immediately know from a glance what I'm responsible for. This isn't some way of me saying, oh, I can't do anything unless I'm told what to do. That's not what it's about. It's about knowing what other people need you to do in order to get stuff done in the company. You can see what your tickets are blocking for somebody else. You can see what you've promised to do in an IRC channel conversation without having to go into IRC and be like, hey, what did I do again yesterday? All right? That provides a sense of organization and order. In fact, I think it was one of our new hires who said that we were the most organized startup she'd ever joined. That right there, for me, that just felt, oh, I think I know exactly what she's talking about. Okay? The sense of connectedness and accountability, I think, provides the baseline for us to do all the cool things we do, despite being distributed all over the place. Now, I want to provide a really important caveat right here. Everyone's comfortable with the tools we use, all right? When I interviewed, I asked my interviewers, hey, just describe an average day. And the first thing, well, I wake up and I check IRC. Like, I've been on IRC for the past 6 years of my life. They can easily tell that, I fit in. I'm going to fit in with the way they communicate. I'm going to be comfortable with it. Because if people aren't comfortable with it, if they're not comfortable with your communication methods, if they don't take them seriously, don't buy in, then they're going to feel left out. They're going to feel disconnected. You're going to lose sight of them. You're going to fall through the cracks. Okay? And that's not fun. So in order for a tool to work, you have to buy in. You have to make an honest compromise to work with it. Okay? So if you've got a small, close-knit team, find the tools that work for you. For me and my team, it's IRC and ticketing. Maybe I'm different for you. Maybe you guys would love phone calls. Okay? More power to you. But we didn't come here for a feel-good talk about communication, did we? We came here to talk about infrastructure. That's what DevOps is all about. Developing tools to automate the management of infrastructure. So, CNG actually has several infrastructures we manage. The first thing I'm going to talk about is sort of the central one, the kind of the king of all of them. Okay? And just like the king of all things, it's sitting in the cloud where it has 100% availability, never goes down, and is perfect and magical in every way. which we just learned from GitHub lately, didn't we? So we host a good portion of our our centralized services for the whole team in Google Compute Engine. Google Compute Engine is super nice and flexible because you can easily spin up and tear down VMs whenever you need them. You can scale them up, scale them down. It's really flexible, and it's really cool because every time you log in, you get to see like in real time how many cents they're billing you. It's really amazing how you can log into Google and see that Google owes you 2 cents when you've used your machine for 2 days. It's really weird. So let me just kind of draw down a picture because I know we've got some visual learners in the world. So what we've got right here in this picture, we have our Puppet master, we have ourselves an internal PyPI server, we've got a Jenkins master and a Jenkins worker, which look identical because whatever. Anyway, in our infrastructure, the Puppet master manages everything. All right? Who here is familiar with Puppet? About half the room. I'll give a brief introduction. The way Puppet works, in a very sort of high-level, non-technical way, is it maintains sort of a gold standard ground truth on what every device it manages should look like. All right? What happens is you have agents in our installation running on each of these servers, and periodically they check the Puppet master and say, hey, has anything changed the way my machine's supposed to look? Let me know and I'll fix it. Okay? So for example, if we need to add a new user to our team, like whenever I joined the company 3 months ago, what we'll do is that we add ourselves a new entry, a new user, a new SSH public key here in the Puppet master. And then whenever these guys update, like, hey, someone's new, let's make a user for them and get their public key set up so they can work. On the flip side, adding a new server is just as easy. All you have to do is make the server, connect to the Puppet master, and then thanks to a nice common framework, he goes, oh, I'm brand new. I need to get these users made, I need to get some standard documents, some standard packages going. You know? Within about 10 minutes, this little guy, this is our IRC bot, cute, isn't he? He's ready to go. You're able to log in and get your work done. Okay? That's really cool. Don't stop there. The nice other cool thing is that all the configuration is in GitHub. This is cool for 2 reasons. First of all, it's in the cloud. We'll never lose it, even if the thing goes away. Nothing on GitHub is ever going to go away because it's distributed, right? Never going to lose it. So first of all, yeah, if this goes down, we have a backup. In fact, every one of the team probably has an up-to-date version of the GitHub repository of the Puppet manifest. But here's the other cool thing. Anyone on the team can configure all these machines by just pushing a pull request up here and syncing it with the Puppet master. Whenever I had to add myself to the team, that was my first introduction to their flow. I made a pull request with my credentials on the GitHub account, just my public key and my username and my desired, my desired home directory stuff, and then boom. It gets propagated over here, everybody's got it, I can log in and get my work done. If I lose my public key, no big deal. Just upload a new one to GitHub, wait for it to sync, and I can go again. Okay? As a distributed team, we're able to use this cloud code sharing service to manage our infrastructure. And that right there, I think, is proof for living in the future. So now, let's talk about something a little bit more complicated. Let's try and do a real ops thing. Oh, first of all, one more thing, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so what we do is we actually have 2 branches. So this is how we're going to change something. We have a master branch and a test branch, which are just GitHub branches, nothing magical about them. But they correspond to 2 environments in Puppet. A Puppet environment is a set of configuration files associated with some arbitrary environment. All these services are all in production, okay? Meaning that when their agent checks something, I'm in the production environment, what's changing for the world of production, give it to me. However, with just a flip of a switch, you can switch one to test. And that right there is how we do our modifications, or our ops stuff, okay? So, for example, we have a very standard issue job. We have to add a new Jenkins job, which is a continuous integration. It runs unit tests and checks style of our software. We have to add a new software job to Jenkins. So what that means is we have to, first of all, make sure it's in Jira, our ticketing system, because if it's not there, it wasn't done, right? And then what we do is we create a branch that matches the issue number in our ticketing system. We do our work in a branch, okay? We do the full proper GitHub flow. All work is in its own branch. And then we switch this guy to test. And whenever we're ready to start actually testing things out, we pull our branch onto here into the testing environment, and then we update the Puppet agent. That's what, we update the Puppet agent, and we pull our changes and see, does it work? Okay? All these machines are still in production, so they're not affected by switching something to a different environment. Okay? Puppet's really cool like that. So we pull it in there, we run Puppet Agent here and make sure everything's working. And then, when we're ready to actually pull the change in production, we switch this dude back to production, we do a pull, and we merge, test, and then push that back up to GitHub. And then, we do proper code review. I'm not joking either, we do real code review in my team. We make a pull request from test into master. Okay? And then what you do in IRC is you tell someone, hey, I've got some changes, I want you to review them so we can push them into master. So, we do the pull request, and then another member of the team is the one responsible for reviewing and merging the changes. Go for it.
So, you did your test on the Jenkins machine while it was in the test environment. Then you switched it back?
Yes.
And you're sure that everything got undone because?
Oh, well, what you do, well, you switch it back and then you check with Jenkins again to make sure it's still working. Because whenever you switch back to another environment, you might have inadvertently caused some changes that are irreversible. So you have to verify that first.
See, that's what the black magic is.
Well, I mean, I'm more than happy to kind of go through a more detailed example when we hit the questions part because of the short presentation. But I'll be more than happy to go through those. But yeah, what he's asking is, I'm trying to kind of provide a high-level overview of our workflow. So the last step of the workflow is the code review process. Okay? Before it ever goes into master, before it ever goes into production, we perform a code review, and then someone else in the team merges it. Okay? And what's really cool is, thanks to my little IRC bot, whenever we do a pull request, we actually get a little announcement that a pull request is in the works and that somebody needs to go check it out. So we see Nat open the pull request and then Vander's reviewed and closed it. Hopefully he did the right job and did a proper code review. So why go through all this trouble? Why am I going through all these gymnastics just to add a new job to Jenkins? It's a simple fix, right? There's two reasons. First of all, splitting out that server from the production from the production environment insulates the rest of the production environment from any inadvertent changes I make. All right. The cool thing about Jenkins, or the cool thing about Puppet, is that you only pull what your server is responsible for getting. So what you do on one machine, as far as I know, maybe I haven't learned enough about Puppet, is not going to change anybody else in another environment. So you're insulated. Okay. It's possible in the test environment to change some other server. But because that was not in the test environment, those changes don't get propagated. All right? Secondly, putting each fix in a single pull request makes it much easier to code review. Code review is no fun when you have to parse through the changes made in 90 different files. Here we make sure that code review is fairly small, fairly quick, fairly easy to get through. And finally, because two people are responsible for every pull, lots of people know what's going on. If something breaks, at least two people will know what happened. And you don't get surprised at 3 a.m. where the only person awake is Nat. And that right there is the flow we do for remote administration of our infrastructure. Okay? It's a very simple ops job, not particularly fancy, but we have a procedure and policy in place so that we have some degree of safety for our production infrastructure that we all depend on to get our work done. All right? And that's something I've fallen in love with. I find that organization within the team is, I think, why we all get along so well. We all take it very seriously. Even one thing I completely left out here is for our code, we also run every pull request through Jenkins to do style and style and compliance checks, which is really great. So that means even if you are a horrible person who actually does submerge themselves, there's still some level of safeguard keeping you from ruining everything. So let's scale out even bigger. When I was hired, my particular kind of chartered reason to work at the company was to work on a tool called the Cumulus Customer Workbench. All right? So here's the use case for it. Switches are kind of expensive for me and you. All right? I think a switch goes for $5,000, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know.
They range in price, yeah.
They range in price, but in general, it's not the kind of thing you just walk into your Best Buy and expect to only spend about $300 on like a throwaway laptop like this.
Still not orderable from Amazon.
Still not orderable from Amazon. See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I think every place I go, you have to actually call a salesman to find out what the price is. So, the workbench is designed to kind of make this make playing with our equipment more accessible, because we're doing something kind of strange, and a lot of people are a little hesitant to buy something until they can try it out first. So that's where the workbench comes in. The workbench, or rather a workbench, there are many of them, is a connected group of switches and hosts sitting in one of our labs that we essentially lease out to a customer or to a potential customer to try out. We wipe it clean, we give them an SSH login, they get to play with it for 24 hours, they can run our demos, they can test and see if software they're developing is compatible with our system, they can just play around just to see what it's like to run Linux on a switch. They can play Space Invaders for all I care. It's pretty fun. And they have, and they absolutely have. So, that right there is sort of the workbench. And as you can imagine, building one of these things isn't like just building a software application. I mean, there's a whole lot to it. It's not just enough to write the software infrastructure. You have to have a whole plan ready to manage these boxes of really expensive equipment sitting in your lab. Okay? And that right there is what I'm talking about when I say, wow, I thought when I was in DevOps I wanted to be building something, boy was I wrong. All right? So, I don't want to get too much into details about this because I'm saving this for a future presentation with a lot more detail about the cool stuff we're doing. But sort of kind of a very broad picture of it is we got some stuff in the cloud, some stuff in the lab. Stuff in the cloud, we have a centralized website you can log into and see what's going on. Kind of got like a command and control thing going on where it sort of watches over the many distributed workbenches that we have across the world. In the lab, you got yourself a serious pod, which has, you know, a kind of a host you log into. It's got its own top of rack switch running, Cumulus Linux. It's got a bunch of workbenches all wired up, ready to go. And it has to be able to handle these on-demand requests to provision and get it ready for the next customer. And it involves lots of Python daemons. We're going with the microkernel approach where we just write these really small Python daemons that run and do one single task. We got them all over the place. And this is what I think is really spectacular. Let's say we want to add a new feature. Let's say we want to upgrade the workbench. Here's what we do. We use the GitHub flow again, okay? All of our little Python applications are all sitting safely in GitHub. What we do is whenever we merge into those two repositories, production and test, first of all, Jenkins will run compliance tests. But when it finishes running the test and finds it successful, it publishes it to an internal PyPI repository. Who here is familiar with PyPI? Anyone here use pip install for anything? Okay, so PyPI is basically like apt, or like pip is like apt for Python packages. What's really cool is you can host your own. So we actually host our own internally, because here's what happens. Whenever we make a change and upgrade one of our softwares, we have it automatically pushed to our internal private PyPI server. That PyPI server is then looked at by our Puppet master, or by our Puppet clients more specifically. Whenever it finds an upgrade in any particular package, it fetches it, reinstalls it, and reboots the service it runs. Meaning, we can publish a new version of the Workbench directly from GitHub. All we have to do is update the software, bump the version number, it goes into test. We make sure it's all working, and another thing I completely forgot to mention, we have two entire workbenches infrastructure. We have the testing one and the production one. So in our smaller system, we remove servers from production, switch them into testing, put them back. Here, we actually have a whole full first-class test infrastructure. And whenever we install that new version, we can quickly go, look, what did we break? Did changing that one component break anything else? And if it's still running happily with all the right versions and everything, just flip the switch, merge and master, and Puppet will take care of the rest. And that is what me and Nat call living the DevOps. And of course, it's not being a developer if you're not doing any debugging. All right? This isn't like a single application. Printf debugging won't cut it anymore. So what do? Well, we use, first of all, already existing logging tools, and then roll some of our own to keep track of what's going on. We use the Python built-in logging infrastructure to log each service's data to its own files, especially crashes. I found a fun little bug where if you use a service with Upstart and it's on respawn, it'll kind of just crash, and unless Python's logging, you'll never know why it failed, and then it just keeps bringing itself back to life and dying again. It's very frustrating. So you need to log, for example, the exceptions that crash your entire program, and you need to make sure they're available so whenever something goes down, you can check on it. We also have like a little heartbeat. Okay, the heartbeat is where every single service is sort of phoning back home to the main infrastructure, letting it know I'm still alive. Here's how long I've been alive. I haven't restarted lately. I'm doing a good job. And we use that to verify that everything is sort of consistent and that restarting something doesn't kill an application and cause it to restart. And that's really fun too. And then what we can do now is we can hook these into things like Loggly. We can hook them into things like StatusCake, all those fancy enterprise monitoring solutions out there to keep track of what's going on in our system, to just keep an eye on it, because it can be it's black magic, trying to keep track of all these inner working systems all communicating through some strange message that may or may not be running in the background. So for me, building this workbench has been like building a software project. And the thing I loved about building software projects, but the big difference between this is why I love things like Raspberry Pi, why I love things like Arduino. It's a software product that I can feel. It's one that I can see in front of me running and living and breathing, and I find that so rewarding to be able to sort of to work with something that actually exists in this world, and it's not just abstract thought matter. It's not, it's object-oriented in the physical sense of object-oriented, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And what's really cool also is that, we can, a lot of the stuff, because, a lot of what we're doing, some of it is, internal and useless, some of it's proprietary, but for the most part, the practices we develop here are completely shareable. We have Leslie, she went to, I think it's Puppet Camp, or Puppet Conf, and gave us a talk on the switch to the server. She gave us that talk at NCSU logo last week, I think. And that's really spectacular. That we're able to share that, we're able to come out from behind the scenes and share these modules. Oh, in fact, Puppet Labs just released a press release today about the fact that we have open sourced a bunch of Puppet modules designed to make it easier to deploy, to make it easier to configure the front panel ports on a Cumulus Linux switch. Okay? We worked on those because it was something that we figured out needed to be done. If we do it ourselves, we'll be able to use it for our own stuff. And if we share it with other people, it makes their life managing it easier. Okay, that's one example of why I think Dalvik is so cool. Because you're not giving away your bread and butter. You're sharing the knife and the refrigerator. Tools that you don't really have a whole lot of personal secret attachment to. Tools that are best shared because it improves the community for everybody. And that's what open source is all about. So, if it wasn't for this job, I wouldn't have known anything about automation or networking. Okay, I've been having a spectacular time working here. My team is absolutely great. The other teams are okay.
We feel the same way, Bear.
Yeah, I know you do. But seriously, no, it's been really spectacular, and I see now that I was extremely misguided in my first impression of DevOps. So hopefully, if you were as well, I have either revealed my further ignorance or I have relieved you of yours. So thank you very much. So before I open the floor to questions, stay in touch with us. We actually have our own meetup group called the Cumulus Linux Open Networking Meetup. It's not just a corporate meetup where we talk about our stuff. It's about all the cool stuff that goes into open networking, sort of the things we've open sourced, other things that our collaborators and other areas are doing. We're hoping to get this thing really off to a great start. So hopefully, if you drum up interest, we'll be able to have more events. We release a lot of stuff. We are a legit company. So our GitHub is full of stuff like those Puppet modules I told you about, and some other contributions we've made in our work. And like Andy said, we are hiring. Okay, lots of really great opportunities, career opportunities. Hopefully, if you are interested in them, either let us know, apply yourself, reach out to me on IRC. I'd be more than happy to talk more about sort of the work environment. It's pretty spectacular. Yeah.
So a lot of the discussion, I feel it comes from like an IT perspective or an IT-centric or oriented perspective, which is great. And I hold some Q&As and webinars on DevOps myself, and just put it from a perspective in that there's two worlds out there. One is that IT-centric, the other is product development-centric. And our focus is on the product development-centric. And so to to the subject matter of product development, DevOps is system level thinking end to end with broad functional teams, all the way from marketing to field to operations and so on. And it's about how do you start from customer input to delivery and attain continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment at a flow all the way through. Automation from the IT type centric perspective is a great attribute and absolute tremendously necessary part. When you look at the product side, you need that component plus and delivery side, which is what we focus on in Overture, and one of my teammates here with me every day. So it's good talk. I just felt like it'd be good to share that perspective as well. And I'll send you a link if you will to Q&A I'm holding at the end of the month.
Awesome.
Webinar if the group is interested.
Spectacular. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I'm 3 months into this. So I'm seeing it exactly from where I'm standing, and it's also. I mean, yeah, I know there's like I said, DevOps means so many different things because it's a new hotness. So it's great to hear from another side of the field.
How much time do you feel like you spend integrating all of these different pieces versus actually writing stuff that matters?
Stuff that matters, right? So when you say, well, I mean, so that's an interesting question. So the question is, how much time do I spend like on integrating pieces versus writing quote stuff that matters? And the question is, when you say integrating, what do you mean? You mean like
your IRC bot and
yeah.
your Jenkins workflows and
yeah.
your GitHub notifications and all that stuff.
Some of those are like, just cute proof of concepts. It's just kind of a way to show that you can develop something that's compatible with the infrastructure you've already built. Like that was one of my first jobs. It was just, hey, prove you were a good hire. Make an IRC bot. Just show us you can do it. That's what I did. I just threw it together, and I actually had to go the whole gamut from writing the bot itself to creating a virtual machine, connecting it to the Puppet Master, and creating its own Puppet module. Right. So that was more of a proof of concept thing. As for the writing stuff that matters, so right now the bulk of my time is spent on the interaction between these Python daemons, which is the functionality of the workbench itself. Part of my work is, of course, adding new functionality, making it do one more thing than it did before. Other parts of it is improving the automation flow, because we want to make sure that when the thing's deployed, it's not a management nightmare. So we want to make sure that we build it with the management policy in mind in advance, and sometimes that requires a lot of refactoring, but we want to do that refactoring up front rather than down the road. Refactoring is always easier in advance. Does that answer the question? Do you have any follow-up? Go for it.
Isn't that helpful? So it's a great question, and I'll give you an example. We've done some outsourcing.
Okay.
And a lot of people know about outsourcing. It's a great way to go, less expensive, all that, all those a lot of people do that. But I will tell you from personal experience, without that infrastructure, without Jenkins continuous improvement, without GitHub, or in our case we use GitHub and SVN, but without that tied together, we have mass chaos. We have people in our outsource location, I'll spare to protect the entity, but there's no scope control. There's no quality control. There's no quality every day as they build. And when you run a Jenkins continuous integration every 15 minutes in any code, you can improve the quality all the way along, so that when you get ready to deploy, it's a no-brainer. There's no surprise. So without those tools, I mean, I'm all with what Barry said. It's great. That's why I said part of your presentation is excellent. Without those tools, we have, and we actually did in the last couple of weeks, a couple of cases of chaos because they weren't using the tools, and they were off sending emails and using Excel sheets and using garbage and personal workstations only. And I had to grab a lasso and put it on their neck. That's the case. It's ultimate chaos. And if you're doing one or two jobs or one server or something, it's huge. But as soon as you scale it, it's out of control without that infrastructure control. So,
well, I'm finding that I'm spending it like, instead of spending 80% of my time doing stuff that matters, I'm spending 50% of my time wiring up GitHub or wiring up Jenkins to do the thing I wanted to do, dang it. And
But I think I know you're going for gravity, but I think a better distinction rather than stuff that matters versus sort of the infrastructure cleanup is sort of focusing on new features, being able to add new functionality to the system, which I think is what you're getting at. Adding the use cases, adding the customer's requirements. And speaking to the speaker's point here is by having the machine intermediate that step, it provides less avenues for mistakes to be made, and scaling up is no longer exponentially increasing your workload.
Oh, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. I
Yeah.
just don't think that it should be taking 50% of my time for
Yeah, I'd like to
doing these
comment.
integrations.
Go for it.
I'd like to comment and just chime in on this, is you have the easy answer. They are you. But for some of us else, what you guys said, having that infrastructure is so important, but then if you get this dragon breath saying, why are you wasting your time tweaking the IRC server? You're supposed to be working on the workbench. That can be very hard, so you do need to pay for someone like you to keep this stuff going. And it's really tough, because I'm in that position right now where like 20 to 40% of my time is keeping some infrastructure going like you're talking about. And you're getting this management drag of, what do I need senior people keeping this stuff going?
Well,
and sometimes you do, because if you don't know Puppet, if you don't have the idea of GitHub, if you don't have the idea of putting together all this stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I think another element that comes into play there is both the feel that you don't have someone with the skill set, but also it's a different paradigm to begin with. It's a paradigm that still is being picked up by managers, being picked up by developers, being picked up by operations people. You have to get used to that paradigm, and once again, it goes all the way up to buy-in. If people don't value people don't value it. That's all there is to it.
It's extremely difficult.
Measuring the wrong thing if you're trying to estimate how much time you're spent maybe doing infrastructure versus actually delivering product.
Well, okay, so let me...
measures how long it takes you when you do work on that infrastructure versus how long it would take you if you didn't do that infrastructure.
Well, I totally, and let me quantify this by saying that I am the DevOps guy, right?
Yeah.
That's how it is to do the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
But I have projects that I want to do that are not wire up this new issue tracking system so that we get notifications in IRC, right? That's not the job I want to do.
I think you put in a little bit of initial investment in order to kind of multiply your efforts down the road. So you're front loading your efforts in a way. You're doing the initial setup, and yeah, at first you're doing a lot of stuff that you wish you weren't having to do.
I think we might just be shooting the messenger and preaching to the choir. Am I not mistaken?
That's when you retire.
Every 3 days I'm looking at a new API, grabbing a new API key, and writing new Python code to do something that somebody else has done 50 times.
All right,
So I want to see all of your integration stuff, and I want to see everybody else's integration code, and I want to be able to pull and plug my key in and say, okay, I'm done. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, here. Let's move let's see if we want to get the conversation to more folks, and then we'll return back to the center if no one wants to talk. I saw some hands up over here. Anyone? Go for Matthew.
So since all of your servers and things are in the cloud,
Never go down.
How much fun? How much do you instead of just changing server, turning servers into one environment and turning them into another, how often do you just spin up new servers and then destroy them, and then spin up new servers and test things, and holy crap, the server's screwed out, well, we'll just blow it up and start a new one?
You mean just for fun because I have the power to?
Well, not just for fun.
All the time. Right now we don't really do a whole lot of that. We actually do. We actually sort of spin up servers almost as a last resort, but that's just our design philosophy.
Well, that was a motion question to go on that.
Oh, sure.
Because the one that was bugging me was you said, we get this production server, then we switch it to a test server, then we switch it back to a development server. What I would have almost thought you would have been doing, which is Matt's question, is we have a development server, we spin a new test server, then when that's proven, we kill the old development server and then spin a new one and then add the new code to it. Not try to make it from test to development, or how do you clean it up to make sure you got rid of all the crap that wasn't quite right?
Yeah, that's probably a smart way to do it. I mean, yeah. I mean, because one
That's
actually.
what Puppet's for.
Well, I mean, so that's actually really interesting because one issue we have a whole lot is we have this fun question we play with: how many puppet runs does it actually take before it's fully figured?
So, maybe I'm making the wrong assumption, but
Go for it.
are your labs really in the cloud? Because you've got physical hardware switches.
Yeah.
That you're so,
We have some in physical, we have some in the cloud. In general, what we do for the cloud is mostly like anything with like a web UI is generally in the cloud to maintain availability and to avoid the issues of having to go through a ridiculous number of VPNs to get to our stuff in-house. And then for the stuff in-house, that's mostly running workbenches and workbenches. So most of our production tools we use on a daily basis are in the cloud while our workbenches are physical devices. Was there a follow-up question to the assumption, or?
well, that was part of the why would you, because if you're in the cloud, the kind of current thinking is you never care about a server, you use it as long as you need it, you throw it away when you're done. So yeah, you would spin up a test server, you would test, you'd throw it away.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. The only, yeah, that's about right.
Or maybe snapshots? You take a
Snapshots.
snapshot, you blow it up, and you say, okay, we'll go back to the working snapshot. And
I did that a lot when I was at Extreme. It's like, all right, time to test my new deployment script. Snapshot, run. Crap, forgot, typoed a URL. Merge a snapshot. All right, typoed a package name. Crap, run. Exceeded my GitHub lit rate limit. Crap, now I've got to wait an hour.
So another limitation for this, this doesn't apply to the switching things out, but it's sort of another issue is that we're naughty and we have some hard-coded IP address references. So if we were to make a copy of it, that one wouldn't be referred to and would sort of not be really testing its location in the environment. But we come with things, we learn. It's a constant learning experience, which is another reason why I love the job I'm doing. Anybody else? Go for it.
The ones this is sort of out of my comfort zone, so it would be easy. The one slide when you put it up, the one that showed had the list of tools.
The communication tools? Or
Yeah, I think it started with IRC.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then Jira, and then GitHub. What about that? Anything is specific to DevOps?
None of
Could those be applied kind of with a counter different, clearly different, like I come up with a great new 3D graphics hardware, and I want to write drivers and things for it.
For me, I don't think it's particularly specific to DevOps at all because these are the things I developed when I was running study groups here at State of the Student. Things that I emphasize sort of the presence and accountability in everything I did. So the presence, I use IRC channels because it's what I'm comfortable with, and it just has to be something that works with my team as well. It's a foundational thing, but it's not specific to DevOps at all.
I think what's important that Barry talked about that I've seen across multiple organizations, obviously, is that everyone has to use those tools.
Yeah.
It has to be comfortable with it, and every team, every team's going to feel a different level of comfort with. So if you've got a team and they just seem deathly afraid of IRC, I've had those. I've worked with groups like that. You're like, okay, well, fine. How do you want to talk to me? Because not talking is not the option.
Right.
And hoping you can find that middle ground. Because Barry's in a situation that I don't know if I'm certain a lot of people here in this way that there is no other person on his team in his time zone, which has been my experience a lot in this industry as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
For detail, what actual software do you use to run your local PyPy?
I use the Simple PyPy server, which is sort of a bare minimum reference implementation. It's really easy to spin up. All it does is it has a local folder of Python eggs, and it serves them via the pip protocol.
Well, this is just PyPy server?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use that one too.
Yeah. Right here first.
Did you mention, how often the meetup was?
How often what meetup was? We don't have a regular meeting time yet. It's the brand new meetup group, and we're also currently trying to fold in some folks from the networking engineers meetup group, which kind of disbanded recently. So just keep an eye on it. We'll come up with a regular meeting schedule once we figure out who our core members are. Any questions?
If you're more interested in this DevOps stuff, there's a DevOps meetup group that's been meeting the last couple of years in this area, and late last year, Humans was a presenter at the DevOps meeting as well.
Cool. I wasn't aware of that.
Next meeting is Tuesday.
Next Tuesday?
Yes.
Fancy.
It's on meetup.com's Triangle DevOps. I mean, just down the street at Website, or Ronto's. We'll switch back and forth.
Okay.
Are you playing the role of your environment starts to get more complex? Probably some will start to have, a lot of places will have either like, development, production, and they'll start to have like a QA integration. You just can't seem to escape that model.
Yeah, that's probably what we'll end up doing, because once again, like I said, this is a learning experience for me, so I'm trying to figure out sort of the best way in general, the best way that kind of works for me and my team. So that's probably, that's one thing I actually envision, having kind of a fake workbench that has no physical devices attached to it that we use for, like, quick compliance checking and automated testing.
Did these tools make it easier for you to learn what had gone before when you showed up?
Before, as in before with the company?
But, well, you joined the company already existed and had something there. You didn't, I gather you didn't build the entire thing yourself.
I did the whole thing myself. Actually a lot of, I think it was a week after I started that we first created the VMs for the workbench, because we were kind of rebuilding it with scalability in mind right now. It basically watching my teammates work on this and then being assigned small tasks with my onboarding process, which I think is another part of why I'm really comfortable with the company, is that, despite being very new to all this stuff, they didn't hold my hand, but they didn't, chuck me in the deep end of the pool either. It was a very thoughtful sort of development where I was given opportunities to learn on my own and then ask for help when I needed it.
And it was easy using GitHub, Jenkins, all these things that. Well, how much of it you were already familiar with? You already knew
okay,
IRC.
I hear where well, actually,
how did you learn the rest? And did it make it hard or easy?
I was actually familiar with all these tools, which is why I was a perfect job description match. Because I put all those on my resume, and they're like, "Oh, we use all these. This guy, we didn't talk to him." So the only thing I was completely new to was Puppet, all the continuous integration and Google Compute Engine. Everything else I had worked with pretty regularly. Going once.
Were you able to read the Puppet modules to learn how the Google Compute Engine worked, for instance?
No. I had to arrange and sit down and have a meeting with someone so they could explain it to me. But it certainly helped. Going twice. Hearing no further questions. I don't know. What, Matthew?
Are you giving away those rocket turtles?
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about these. Yeah, I was gonna give them to people who are asking really good questions. All right. Well, I think I know who the people who grilled me the hardest were, so I think I'll offer them to y'all first. And if you want to give them away, then you can have the masses tear you apart instead of me. All right. But yeah, so hearing no further questions, I think I will call a meeting and then request that we all resume this conversation at Bada Wings.